I guess we're ready to start again. So so I know. So the next item, if I can have your attention, please. I guess so. Preston is back on. Okay. Okay, we're back. We're back on. And the next item on the agenda is a presentation from Elemental Energy. And we have Jonathan Turner, who's going to give us a presentation. Oh, sorry. There you go.
Can you guys hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity to present this evening. I'll start with slide number 1. So I think just to start off, I think that Will had covered a bunch of the early content in the slides to sort of characterize the need for the project. So I'll kind of run through these pretty quickly and try and cover things that Will might not have said. One thing I just wanted to point out, and I think it is probably a factor of math and that we have changed the number of turbines in the project, but Will mentioned that it was a 91 megawatt nameplate capacity project, and my math says 12 times 7 is 84. So that's what we've recorded for our nameplate capacity of the project. We are Wedgeport Wind Limited Partnership, which is the development entity, is a partnership with Swaganagity First Nation, ourselves, Elemental Energy, and another partner. Elemental Energy is the lead developer, who has done all the development work and will be managing the construction. And so we are the face of the project. So it was mentioned that the project was awarded a power purchase agreement under the rate-based procurement, which was led by Nova Scotia Power. The project does come with significant avoidance of emissions through the generation of new, clean, renewable electricity. And I think what wasn't said is the province has, in addition to replacing coal-fired generation, they have seen these wind projects as being economic stimulators for rural Nova Scotia communities, in that they bring good jobs and they bring investment in the form of municipal tax revenues and community benefits. And so we see both this project as being a benefit in the type of energy it's producing and in the revenues and economic opportunities it's bringing to these rural communities. Next slide, please. As was mentioned, we are sort of bound by the communities of Wedgeport, Little River Harbor, and Comos Hill. That's the project site. The project includes 12 7-megawatt wind turbines. Other project components include the electricity collector lines, which bring generated electricity from the turbines to our substation. We may have an operations and maintenance building on site. We are still determining whether we either lease a local building or construct one of ourselves, but it's important to have a place for our crews to work out of, a place where they can store spare parts. And it's anticipated crews will be on the site every day. So they need a place to have lunch and a place to stage from. There will be a permanent access road from Black Pond Road, and that's going to be the primary access. Associated with construction, we have a number of laydown areas, and it's to be determined whether those laydown areas will stay through the operations period. The turbines are required to be 1,000 meters away from residents, we are currently working on the site doing geotechnical investigations. So this is our final, layout, but the turbines are subject to small changes based upon our geotechnical investigations. Project construction is anticipated to start in May 2020. 2024 with operations planned for late 2025, early 2026. And so the next couple slides that I've put together are responsive to the different kind of questions that we received during the various sort of public engagement sessions, and also working with Scott and Alain around other questions they were getting from the public. So I think, a really important document governing the project is our environmental assessment approval. It is, as Councillor Saulnier noted, it's a very large document. I believe that the Municipal District of Argyle still has a hard copy of the document here, so it would be available if people have trouble accessing it online. But the document will be posted online and publicly accessible through the duration of the project. And we'll make sure that a copy is kept here if anybody has any questions. So this document, along with the approval that has a number of conditions, really govern what has been committed to by us in constructing and operating the wind project. So as part of our approval, we are required, there's a request to do some additional assessment work. So we are required to complete a second year of bird and bat monitoring. And so we completed that over the past 2023 field season. We are also required to update the sound and shadow flicker modeling prior to construction. And the rationale for that commitment is related to, it's quite often that turbines will have an initial layout, and as we do geotechnical investigations and we kind of work through the development sort of process, is that they change. And I think that's also something to note here. If you look at the figure on the right-hand side, that's actually a heat map of sound generated from the turbines. And I think there's more than 12 turbines there. So there's a couple notes here. As part of our environmental assessment application, we submitted a project that had 13 turbines. And so just for just so everyone is sort of familiar, but turbine 7 and turbine 10, I don't have a laser pointer, but those are the turbines that are on the east side, exactly, and up against the Tuscan Wilderness area. We have removed those turbines. They're no longer there. We're, if you think of, and the gap in the project between turbine 11 and turbine 12, we have placed an extra turbine at that location. Also, as part of our sound modeling, this is a sound modeling heat map. As part of the sound, we did model the existing turbines as being present, so they're included in the sound. So we looked at cumulative sound of all the turbines and included those 3 turbines that are existing, one of which is the turbine, it looks to be C3 or E3, it's hard to see. That is a turbine that is owned by Elemental Energy and was constructed in about 2016, I believe. It became operational. And just maybe on the sound map, the outside border of the green area represents 40 decibels, which is the required all for compliance with Nova Scotia regulations. Sound has to be less than 40 decibels at the receptor locations. And if you see the yellow dots that are identified by letters, those are all the dwellings that are in closest proximity to the wind project, which we measured modeled sound from the turbines. So in our sound report, which I believe is Appendix K in the environmental assessment, this figure is there, and you can see the actual sound and anticipated or modeled sound at each of those dwellings. And so that's just a little bit of definition around the sound model. As we put together the environmental assessment, we always think of project phases. So we talk a lot about effects during construction and effects during operation. So that's how, when we're thinking about putting this together, we're thinking about those 2 distinct phases of the project. They have different activities, they have sort of different effects. So construction phase, which is anticipated to start with road construction as the first activity in April 2024. Before we start, we're required to develop a sediment and erosion control plan and surface water management plans, a wildlife management plan, environmental protection contingency plan, and complaint resolution plan. So those are plans that we either need to submit to the EA branch or to share with other regulators that have that responsibility to review our environmental assessment. I will talk a bit more about the complaint resolution plan in a later slide, but that has been something, there's been a lot of questions about that, and so happy to discuss it further. As part of our operations and prior to operations, we are required to have a bird and bat monitoring plan, and that plan needs to, and the actual monitoring needs to occur for at least 2 years of operations. And as part of a commitment or a condition that we also need to have an adaptive management plan that is completed prior to operations, which includes a decision process to mitigate potential impacts to birds and bats. So if during monitoring we discover that that the conditions or that there's events, mortality events associated with sort of migratory birds or resident birds, then we are required as part of our monitoring to report all of our observations. We have to do annual through construction, starting with the approval, we have to do annual reporting to the EA branch against all of our conditions, and all of our reporting, monitoring programs need to be reported to the responsible agencies. And so that adaptive management plan could require us to change our operations if at certain times of year associated with certain types of birds or bats that there is a mortality event, we are required to change our operations. And we'll do that working with the regulator and with the EA branch. Also, as part of our operational phase sort of conditions, the complaint resolution plan is for the life of the project. And so we have to, if required, so if there's complaints that are raised around sound or shadow flicker, we are required to undertake operational sound and shadow flicker sort of monitoring that are based on conditions that are experienced from our operations of the project to demonstrate compliance. And so that's another requirement of our EA approval. And finally, there are certain conditions kind of related to decommissioning, which are similarly sort of, I guess, mirrored in our development agreement as well. Next slide. So I think the other kind of aspect that was raised through a bunch of conversations were safety concerns. And some of those safety concerns include risk of wildlife fires during construction and operations. I don't live in Nova Scotia, but I'm very aware of the fires that occurred both in Shelburne County and up near Halifax, and the sort of subsequent forest shutdown, and it was a real impact to Nova Scotia. So we're very attuned to that. I'm from British Columbia. We had a very difficult fire season as well. And so that's, something that we plan for in our construction and sort of in our operations. Other concerns that have been raised, risk of blade throw or ice throw during operations, and what are the sort of emergency response procedures. I think a lot of the kind of the concerns around public safety around both construction and operation of the project is addressed through setbacks. And so through our construction period, we will have people on site all the time. We'll likely have security there in the evenings as well, and keeping our WorkSafe site, our WorkSafe site safe, and by making sure that people aren't within the work areas. And so we'll work with landowners and we'll work with other people that if they do occur on site, we'll just make them aware of what the risks are. And if we're undertaking activities which put public at risk, such as blasting, we don't anticipate blasting, but that's potential rock hammering, those types of things, we will stop any work that we're doing until people are at a safe distance. So safety is incredibly important to us at construction. Through the operations, generally with ice throw and blade throw was raised, but we don't see that occurring at operational facilities. But those things will be dealt with by having setbacks. I think that it was mentioned as part of a municipal requirement. There will be a gate, and there'll be sort of warnings about kind of public safety risks at the access point. During operations period, it's not required for us to be on site 100% of the time. So there'll be times when we're not on site. We do 24/7 monitoring of the turbines remotely, and we're able to control the turbines remotely. But there will be workers on site regularly as part of our operations, but we won't be there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So a part of a condition in our environmental assessment certificate is a contingency plan. There'll be a contingency plan both for construction and for operation phases. It is subject to review and approval by Nova Scotia EA branch. There's in our EA, there is a bunch of assessments of the different types of contingencies or conditions that we could reasonably anticipate. So I encourage people to read up on those sort of sections if they have further questions. But primarily, with our environmental assessment, as we plan things, we spend a lot of time developing strategies, measures to avoid potential contingency events. That's the best thing we can do. Is proper planning prevents poor performance, is a quote that I used to get from my dad. But it's all about the planning. It's all about the early identification of risks and changing our operations or identifying kind of fixes to these things before they occur. But we do know that things happen. So as part of this, we will have plans for contingency events. Other things that we would like to be doing, we've had brief discussions with the fire hall, is to do an orientation with them around some different emergency response scenarios that sort of could occur prior to construction and prior to operations, so that there's awareness and familiarity with the site. And that there's people around us, such as if there is an event, we will be calling in sort of emergency response personnel. But the most important thing is that there's some awareness and there's some organization between how we can have handoffs. So how can we accept help and how we can work together to deal with a sort of potential emergency event. And then as part of these, in addition to the response, there's also there'll be a section on remediation measures that we're committed to sort of implementing, how we will clean up after a spill or something like that. And then also as part of our own internal planning, we always will have a debrief and we'll always talk about lessons learned, and do we have to have any changes to our operations to address the event so that doesn't occur again. And I think just the last point is, there is a requirement for us to report out each year. So any type of event, like emergency, like event or condition that we have under the contingency plan, we're required to notify right away any agencies that could be involved, or if there's any breaches in our conditions that result from the contingency event. Next slide. So as part of this as well, there's a complaint resolution plan. This plan we would like to share. It's not we don't want it to be a secret in kind of how we accept and how we manage sort of complaints. I think that as the condition is like written in our approval, we are required to have a reporting system which records all complaints that we receive. It sets out timelines for responding to complaints and establishes a records system that details corrective measures. So, we see complaints coming in. It's an opportunity to listen and to document a concern. It's an opportunity to engage with the person who has raised the complaint, so that potentially there's some education for us that we weren't aware that something's happening that's disturbing someone else, or there's an opportunity for us to educate that person around, these are normal things that we anticipate and we plan for. Look, we'll try to do this to resolve this. Can you let us know if it continues to bother us? That type of engagement. We will have a primary contact person associated with the project. We want that person, during construction, it will be our project manager or our construction manager. During operations, it will be our lead hand on site. We'll make sure that person, their phone number, their email is available. And I think that Elemental Energy is the lead developer operator. Will also be through our corporate office. Will also be available should there be any concerns with the local people that we have on site as well. And the municipality will make sure that the municipality always has our information. And, we'll also want to understand if people are raising concerns or complaints to the municipality, we would like to hear about those as well. And likewise, if we hear about things, we're happy to share back. I just want to note that, as part of this complaint resolution plan, there may be different kind of like responsibilities, accountabilities with events or complaints that occur, in that, we may receive a complaint and it may be a complaint that we're required to report to an agency. And so I've already drafted the complaint resolution plan, so there's a sort of flow chart. But when we start to talk about timelines for responding to complaints, it could be the complaint may require us to engage and negotiate or resolve it with an agency before we can actually come back to communicate, how we've dealt with this sort of complaint. So I just wanted to note that we look at I forget the word that I used, but I think it's there's complaints that sort of come in that we can't resolve, that we have to work with others to resolve. So that may delay a timeline in us sort of coming back. Next slide. And just to kind of close out here, we talked about, project benefits that this will bring. So reduction in greenhouse gas emissions are associated with electricity generation. Wind energy is one of the lowest cost energy ways to generate electricity. I can tell you that I don't share our power purchase price, but I can tell you it's significantly lower than what the average generation cost is today in Nova Scotia. We, as part of the project, we see between 85 and 100 kind of like jobs. There won't be 85 jobs from start to finish, but that kind of characterizes the kind of biggest peak of what our workforce could be on site. As part of operations, we see 6 to 10 full-time jobs. Typically, we have a service company that will help us with our operations and sort of maintenance. What we're seeing these days is with the turbines is that the turbine manufacturer will want to take care of the operations, or actually the maintenance. And so, where those people we look, we're going to need a local crew to help us operate, but we will likely be pulling, or our manufacturer will be sort of pulling different expertise in to service the turbines. It's just like buying a new car. You have a warranty, and you take it back to the manufacturer. Well, not the manufacturer, but the dealer to service that new car until your warranty expires. I think there's a commitment around local contracting and making sure that there's opportunities for local people. Currently, with our geotech program, we have a local excavating company, D'Entremont Excavators, who are out on site. There's a couple of people out there today. I was out visiting them. So where possible, we're going to look to the local supply chain to sort of help us deliver this project. Tax revenues, we touched on that. Community Benefit Fund, we believe this is a very generous amount for the size of the project, and we're very proud to be contributors, and we want our project to benefit all people who sort of live in the area and make some of the activities and some of the important community infrastructure, such as community halls and stuff. We want to support those things as part of our sort of project. So I think that sort of summarizes the sort of benefits and the different concerns that have been raised to me. And so with that is part of the council package. If this gets circulated, I have a detailed schedule in there too. We don't need to necessarily look at that as part of the this evening, but I wanted to make sure that was included.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
The next item is with the questions, and what we've had is we've had some written submissions, and what we're going to do is we're going to go over those first, and then we'll go to the question and answer from the registered and people who are unregistered in the audience or online who want to speak. So I'll turn that to our deputy CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We received 2 written submission, which I've shared with council, and I'll just kind of talk to you briefly around those. One of them had to do with the setbacks, and the request was basically to look at increasing the 1,000-meter setback. This is something that council has not council, but the municipality has done some research with WSP to look and see what other municipalities have for setbacks, and the 1,000 meters was, around the average of what most people have out there. So that's where we landed on. The other setback piece was to look at to have the 300 meters greater for seasonal dwellings, because that's what we have in our land use bylaw. This is something that we can consider for future development, because right now in the proposed area, there are no seasonal dwelling that would be less than 300 meters. There's actually no seasonal dwelling that would be within the 1,000 meters. So it's something that we can consider and take back for next development. But definitely good questions. The other submission had to do with the bird migration issue, and that it's not really a land use issue. It's more of an environmental issue. And as you saw, what I've submitted to you was very comprehensive, was 16 to 18 pages with some suggestion and recommendation coming from the federal government to the provincial government. So just to get a little more clarification today, I reached out to the provincial government, Department of Environment, to kind of see, okay, so what's the process here? So he shared with me that during the EA process, there's a time of 30 days that folks can make comments around the environment assessment. Not only just common folks, but they're looking at the federal government. They ask for comments from the federal government, whether it's Transport Canada, Fisheries, or an other department that would be impacted. They also look in their own government, like the provincial government. So they take all that information, such as the information that you received in those comments. Those are all considered when they do their environment assessment. So those things have been considered. Are they all in the EA? Couldn't tell you, but it's something that was considered when they put the package together and submitted to the minister for approval. That's what I can share from my call with the department today. And as you can see, that in the environment assessment, there are terms and conditions around migrating birds. And Mr. Turner kind of explained it in his presentation, what they have to meet the environment assessment.
Okay.
Those were two. Thank you.
So that brings us to the section with questions and answers. What we have, we've asked for people to register if they wanted to participate in this with questions, and we've had one submission. We're also going to open up the floor for if anybody has anything that they have questions. We're going to go to the one that's been registered first, and I would ask that whoever has any questions, not to ask them from your seat. We have to come to the mic, and the first thing that I would ask is that you give us your name and the community that you're from. We don't need a house number or anything. We just need a name and a community, because we're online, we have to do this through the mics. So I have one name, and it's a Dale Mullen. Dale is here. If you want to come up to the mic. And we're trying to limit comments to about 5 minutes. So
My mic is on.
you're on. Yes.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dale Mullen, and I am a Yarmouth resident. And tonight I may refer sometimes to windmills, other times to wind turbines, interchangeably. There is a small difference, but for all practical purposes, we're talking about the same thing. Now, the salespeople here have given you wonderful ideas and demonstrations of what you are to expect, giving you all the positive things. I think there may have been some things left out, and these are the things that I want to address with you people tonight. Wind energy is free, claim some. That is true. Wind energy is free. What's not to like about that? Well, the wind may be free, but that's not the concern. Excuse me. Getting that free wind energy into a usable thing such as electricity and then delivering it to your door is a far different thing and a very expensive part of this. There are some additional things I want to talk about. It's been said, and correctly so, windmills and wind turbines do not run on wind, they run on subsidies. Multi-billionaire investor Warren Buffett was asked one time, why does he invest in wind? He said, because he gets tax credits. Without those tax credits, he would never invest in such a thing. There are three things to consider, or three groups that profit from such a project. One, obviously, is the manufacturer and their salespeople. They profit from this project. Secondly, are governments promoting these ideas. They profit from it using your tax money. Thirdly, a group that is renting or selling land for the construction of these windmills. They profit from this. What we have found out over the years, and I've done quite a bit of studying on this along with my climate studies, is that there have been no commercial windmills built to date that ever returned the energy that was required to construct them in the first place and to maintain them and run them. So when you talk about this extra energy, consider that, please. They've been a disaster on wildlife, birds, bats, insects. They're not called bird choppers for nothing. In the US, companies actually have to apply for a take permit. Kill permit is what that means. They're allowed to kill so many birds before the governments actually intercede. Last year, it was estimated that 1 million birds were killed by wind turbines. A lot of those bald eagles. You need to consider that. We hear some talk about emissions. Most people have no idea what they're talking about when they talk about emissions. But I'll bring it down to carbon dioxide emissions. Concrete is one of the largest emitters of carbon dioxide. In constructing windmills and wind turbines, thousands of tons of concrete are used. Also, a large part of wind turbines is steel. For all practical purposes, steel requires coal for its manufacture. We are getting rid of our coal mines. You may see a problem there. Lifespan and recycling. We're told that these windmills will last 20, 30, maybe more years. Right now, we have no affordable mechanism to recycle those blades. It's not practical, it's not affordable. There is no such thing at this time. That needs to be considered. As for lifespan, let's consider PEI. That's close. Let's consider what happened there. In 2014, 10 brand new windmills came online in PEI. Today, 4 of them still work, and that's at a reduced capacity. In contrast to the promised savings to the residents, the cost to the PEI taxpayers is now in the millions to the taxpayers. All of these turbines, like solar panels and the other renewables, have to be backed up with something. Because of their erratic and sporadic power output, they need to be backed up 24/7, every day of the week, every hour of the day. And the backup is, you guessed it, fossil fuels. That's the backup. The electricity rates in places that have gone primarily with wind turbines has increased dramatically. Consider Germany. They have wind turbines has made a big part of their electrical production. Consider California, supposedly the green state. Lots of windmills there. They have the highest electrical rates in the world. So savings? Consider that for a minute. In Australia, they were told that wind energy would be cheaper than the existing fossil fuel energy. What did they do to prove that point? They raised taxes and put extra taxes on the fossil fuels, taxes that weren't put on the windmills. That made the seemingly difference. But what happened is that they ended up paying more for their energy, regardless which source they used. Landscape, appearance. Think of these things dotting our landscape. Just what does that do to our landscape? We have to ask ourselves, if wind power is such a great idea, why is it necessary to have these government mandates that we have wind power? Why is it necessarily relying so heavily on subsidies? If these are great ideas, can they support themselves? You should ask yourselves that question. And will it really be a benefit to you? Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That's all I have for tonight.
Thank you for your presentation. Do we need someone to respond to that, or if there was no question?
Continue with any and every willing participant for presentation, up to 5 minutes.
Okay. Do we have
sorry,
anybody
3 minutes.
from
3
the
minutes.
floor?
Sorry, 3 minutes. Wrong number.
Pardon me? Yeah. Did you wanted to, okay,
When you open for comments or questions. Yeah.
right now? So you can state your name and your community.
My name is Don McCumber, and I live down on the Little River Wharf Road, Little River Harbor. You mentioned in your presentation with regards to compliance to this project. And I'm just wondering if I might get a response as to who is going to monitor all of the compliance for this project, and who is going to oversee this project. Is there independent individuals that will be hired, or government agencies, et cetera, that will make sure all of the nuts and bolts are tight and things don't go flying, so to speak? So where do you, can you explain to us who will make sure, just as we do in the municipality, you have a building inspector that goes out and ensures that properties are built to code. Who is going to monitor your project and make sure that everything is compliant? And you say you're from British Columbia? Are the company that you represent, are these people local, or are they all out of province? That's my question, if I may have
Okay,
answered.
thank you.
allowed to speak?
Who's,
We can maybe take turns because I think we have different roles. It's a very excellent question.
So I think the question was primarily around monitoring for compliance. And then the second part of the question, just so I don't forget, was about our location, as in based in Vancouver, and how are we going to monitor or be present in Nova Scotia? Those are the two questions, okay? So I'll start with the kind of question around monitoring and compliance, and Ellen, if you want to jump in on my question too, I'll let you know when I'm done. But monitoring and compliance happens at a number of levels, so checks and balances. I think one of the things that is probably not visible to people in the audience or even the municipality is that to execute these projects, we need to borrow a large amount of money. So we have an investor, people who finance these projects. As part of the due diligence around borrowing money, there is a whole team that is behind the investor. That is, there's an independent engineer who, right from the start of all of the estimating and before they even lend us the money, there's a whole series of due diligence that is done on the project, and different experts are hired to represent the interests of the person who's lending us the money to ensure that the commitments that we've made, the estimates on what it's going to cost, the designs that we've commissioned, that we have, again, independent engineers that do the design work for us, that it is appropriate for the location, the ground conditions. The turbine manufacturers won't sell us turbines that are not suitable for the site. So that's another kind of sort of layer of compliance and sort of monitoring that sort of goes on around the project. So it's hard to explain, but there's many different layers around that. We will also on site, we hire our own. We want to be in compliance. We don't want to be out of compliance. We'll hire our own environmental monitor to do weekly or biweekly checks or be on site for any sensitive activities that we're doing. And we'll have them prepare monitoring reports for us. We need to know that the contractors are working in compliance with all of our environmental assessment approval conditions, our municipal conditions. We need to be in compliance. It's very expensive for us to not be in compliance. And then as it relates to sort of following up in construction and sort of operations, the maintenance around the equipment is extremely important to prevent any breakdowns and to prevent any failures, any mechanical failures. And so part of that around the warranty, we talked about the manufacturer will have a very comprehensive kind of maintenance regime that they look at for checking and monitoring the performance of the equipment. And that occurs through the life of the project. So that's kind of how we look at this in terms of monitoring. Generally, I think that a lot of these things are not publicly accessible, and so this is part of our business. But all of our environmental assessment terms and conditions, we have to provide an annual report, and that we've talked with the municipality that we're happy to make sure that's available, which will check for compliance with our permits, and so that can be accessible. Do you want to touch on municipality monitoring?
Yeah, because our role is a little different, and I just want to say that first of all, thank you for your service. We've met, and I just want to say that the question on compliance is twofold. I think the developer and the provincial government, especially environment, have a dual responsibility to make sure that this thing goes the way that they say. We don't have that expertise here. I think that's obvious, right? We're municipal government, right? So, but what we do have is the amplification of your voice. So what we have is a complaint system that we think very highly of around, and that's why we pushed and they accepted the fact that we required we required the same information on complaint system as environment did, because we need to know in the community what's happening, because complaints may not come to us. They may go to the developer. And as a municipality, we may not know if that complaint was received, resolved, we don't know. So if something goes wrong, generally speaking, we have a complaint system that does depend somewhat on the community to say, hands up, something is wrong here. It never used to make that noise, or why is it doing that? And so there is that system. That's one way that we can monitor that. The other way is to monitor it indirectly through environment. So while we don't have the authority or the expertise to say, hey, what you're doing on the migratory bird thing, for example, we may not be in the position to say that it's going well or it's going poorly, but we can through the environmental assessment and through their work, we will be asking those questions. That is actually part of the agreement between us and them, is that we're tying into those. The thing about environmental assessments is you get approval, but they're conditional. So it's not just that on any given day you get an approval. It is an ongoing process. It's not something that just happens. It's something that has to be maintained. So those are probably the two ways that I would best describe our role. We're smaller in the picture for sure, but we do have a role to play. I hope that clarifies certain things.
May I have 30 seconds?
Of course.
30 seconds.
Go back.
Yeah.
Go back.
My response would be that I have 17 years myself in municipal council and a past warden of a county. I've seen types of proposals that have come in. My concern would be when I talk about the overseeing and compliance is that you see companies, you may go out and hire an engineer to oversee the project, we'll say. You know who that engineer gets paid by? The company. Who are they responsible to? The company, not to the public. And I've seen a lot of good mistakes made with engineers that got paid by the developers, etc., that their focus was that paycheck and their obligation to the company to get paid to oversee. And I'm talking about an outside body that monitors the progress of what's going on. And an outside expert, as you have with building inspectors, not worry about the complaints. Somebody that is overseeing you and your company, independent, that has knowledge and skill of that type of project to be able to say, yes, you are doing things, you're on track, and I don't get paid by you. That's my concern.
I just know that Dan is available as well. Dan is one of our engineers, and so he may have something to add here. Oh, well. Can I leave now?
I've taken your notes in advance. I've taken your notes.
Go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, I just was going to add, it was some great questions there. I was actually going to come on to talk a bit as well of our local experience as a company. Where we are based in Vancouver, headquartered here. That's Vancouver behind me. But we are very experienced in Atlantic Canada. The company has owned Windfarm assets in Nova Scotia since 2015. We have 5 projects around the province, including one of the turbines just adjacent to this project that was built in the COMFIT program is one of our turbines. And we've also got projects in New Brunswick and Newfoundland. So we do have a lot of local experience. We have local team members. The project manager for this project is actually located in Nova Scotia. He's not there today, but and we work with a lot of local companies and contractors to ensure our projects operate well. And we do have a really strong track record with those projects in Atlantic Canada. On the engineering side, we work with some of the best engineers in the industry, and those engineers, while we pay for their services, they are professionals that are bound by the duties of the Professional Engineering Association. So we ensure that we work with sort of the best when we build these projects, because they're long-term investments for us, and we need to make sure that they work properly and that they're safe as well.
Mr. Warden, I just want to make note that the concern or request of an outside expert to confirm the compliance is noted, and that we'll have to take that back and check in with some of the other government associations that are associated with this as part of follow-up of that question. I thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, did you?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Doris Powell. I have a substantial property, a piece of beautiful property in Comoes Hill that will be directly affected by this. However, even if I didn't, I would still be against it because it makes no fiscal sense to anyone. Anyway, some of you might remember me as we meet again from 2012 when I had a group of people from Comoes Hill who were adamantly against the 25 proposed turbines that I believe at that time it was Member 2 that was hooked up with them, the band. So it's like shark's teeth, isn't it? So anyway, since then, we were able to stop that because of the bird sanctuary and the environmental assessment, which did fail. So I'm going to be wondering how you're going to get it through this time. Anyway, we were able to stop the 25 turbines. However, unfortunately, we have 3 now because they went to the onesie-twosie model. So they went from, let's try to get 25 in. Oh, the people don't like it. So now we're going to try 1 here, 1 there, and we're up to 3. So congratulations. And also, since those 3 have come in, my electric bill at Comoes Hill has gone through the roof. And if we put these other ones in, anyone who lives in those areas, good luck with your electric bill. So anyway, I just, I don't even know where to start. We gave you a CD for you guys to look at that was, I think it was, I don't know how many gigs it was, Rob, how many gigs? How much? 650 megs. Yeah, 650 megs of data as to why these turbines don't make any sense for anywhere, actually. They're not green. They call them green. There's nothing green about them. The birds that are in Comoes Hill are mostly, the beautiful birds that we have there are raptors, eagles. There's a lot of eagles' nests there. I know that in Digby, when we talked to you back in 2012, there was a guy that spoke that he was the guy that his job was to pick up the dead eagles and burn them. And he had a full-time job. He was busy all the time. So those were the ones in Digby. Anyway, and this property that you're renting, and it'd be one thing if it was owner occupied, but you guys are renting it. Okay, so renters don't give a crap about the property. If you own property and you're an owner, you know that your renters never take good care of your property, right? So they'll be renting it, and it would have to be zoned industrial because this is an industrial wind turbine farm. These things are 900 feet tall, the 7 megawatt ones. So they're not small. These are not small things. And it appears to be a necklace of them going all the way up to my property, actually. So who's going to be paying for the decrease in my land value? Because that beautiful view shed that I have is going to be worthless. I'll be looking at these horrendous, ugly things, and they're not like they're portraying the little brochures where they look like little daisies popping out of the ground. They're not little daisies popping out of the ground, okay? And people, I remember town was talking about, oh, they're tourism. People are going to come look at them. Nobody likes to look at turbines. Go to the Midwest of the United States. There's just areas of just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these things just flapping the winds because they only last about 15 years, and then nobody wants to be the one to pay to take them down because usually by that time the company goes out of business. That's why I notice you're limited partnership. So we'll be the one having to take it down or to dispose of it after 15 years, and that's the average lifespan. Some of them, like the other guy said, only lasted, 4 or 5 years? So, also, my title on my property, when I bought my property, does say that I have the enjoyment of my land. So, I'm not going to be able to enjoy my land with that crap next to me. Not to mention the flicker and the sound. And also, he talked about the sound being only, I forget, what would you say, 40 some? 40 decibels. Yeah, okay. So you're not looking at the subsonic sound, which goes for miles, okay? Also, the animals don't like it. They've done studies where the animals don't want to be anywhere near them. So, just go back here. Also, it's interesting you guys talk about carbon footprint, reducing carbon or whatever. We're carbon-based units. And if you look at the carbon trading system, the cap and trade, we are the carbon they want to reduce, okay? Get that through your head. They want us gone. They want 90% of the population gone. It's a World Economic Forum goal, okay? It's been stated, it's written. So obviously you guys are off the, you missed the memo or something. So anyway, so back to the World Economic Forum. We have Agenda 21, Agenda 30. We're up to Agenda 45 and 50 now because they've already met their 21 goals. So one thing that he said was, this won't change the character of the neighborhood. Really? Having 12 900-foot tall 7-megawatt turbines next to me are not going to, and everyone else who lives in Comoes Hill, that's not going to change the character of the neighborhood? What are you, smoking crack? Hello? I'm serious, though. I mean, it's ludicrous. So anyway, let me finish.
Your time.
So the complaint resolution program that he talked about, my complaint resolution program will be one thing. I'm not going to complain to anybody. I'm suing, okay? Because that's what people need to do, and they will do, is sue you. So this guy over here, what's his name? Glenn? Yeah, I spoke to you a little while ago. Yeah. So we had asked you, what exactly is this power for? And you said it was for EVs. Yeah. My husband.
Can you turn your mic?
It's what you asked me, what he asked me, and that is, why is the big push on
Right.
for power now in Canada?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, maybe EVs.
Okay.
Was my answer.
Okay. So then it's not really for homes.
Is that right, sir? Sure. That's
Yeah.
right. Thank you.
Okay. So, and I do see that they are putting these EV stations everywhere. There's one in front of in front of Canadian Tire. And you guys, I think, have one. I know that the municipality has two of them at Yarmouth, two of them in their back parking lot.
If I may, you're running over. I'll give you one more minute.
Okay, so just make it one more thing. I had a tenant that stayed in a property of mine, and he worked for one of the 3 wind turbine companies. I'm not sure which. He was not from here. He came from Quebec. They hired him from Quebec to come down here, and his full-time job was fixing these turbines, and he was always busy, and it was always breaking. So they're not very reliable, even for what they say they're supposed to be doing. So I guess that's the main thing that I wanted to say. Is the zoning is a big deal because that's an industrial power generation plant right next to my property. I mean, Am I going to be compensated? I mean, I wouldn't have bought that property if I knew they were going to have an industrial plant there, so. But anyway, I'll yield to the next person who's going to speak.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rob Powell. I'm the husband of the one who just spoke.
So you live in
Como's
Hill.
property there. So I was noticing, my wife mentioned about the subsonic studies under 20 hertz, which are not sound. So we haven't even done a study on anything below 20 hertz, correct? That's to you.
I'm not a sound expert, so we do sound modeling according to the requirements and the regulations in the environmental assessment process.
And the definition of sound is?
We look at low frequency, high frequency noises.
To
Again, I'm not a sound expert.
the range that you're measuring. You know that, right? You're an engineer.
I'm not an engineer. I don't know that.
But you have a study. Who generated the study?
Yeah,
Can you turn your mic on? They might want to hear there.
we have an engineer, an expert that does
Sound
sound
engineer.
modeling for us, and that's part of our environmental
So
assessment.
does the study reference the range measured? That's a simple question.
This study provides values at the receptor points, and that's publicly available.
So you can't answer the question. Okay, so I'm assuming it's sound, and the definition of sound is 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, just so we're on the same page. So they didn't measure anything under 20 hertz. That's where all the magnitude of energy coming out of wind farms are. Orders of magnitude, like the energy below 20 hertz, like 000 is more energy in that band. That's subsonic, that's imparted into the ground and propagates into the sea. And to measure this costs about $1.5 million to actually measure sonic pressure waves below 20,000 hertz at distance, at scale. That hasn't been done anywhere in the world, and that's what they talk about with the wind tower syndrome. Well, we're measuring the sound. We don't notice anomalies. Well, they're not measuring. It's like looking in a dark room with a flashlight with no batteries in it. So that's the point. There's a bird sanctuary. The map there describes the necklace of wind farms. To the right of that, where the estuary, where the water is, that is a bird sanctuary. Back in 2012, Member 2 had acknowledged that, the chief of the tribe acknowledged that bird sanctuary, and he sided with that. So all these bird studies and animal studies be damned, there's a sanctuary right there. And I've seen bald eagle pairs about every 2 weeks pass by. They go along the whole peninsular route, up and down, around every 2 months. They've gone since the 3 towers went up, just so you know. So that's with the 3. The wind farms have an abominable production curve for energy versus the demand. When you come home from work, you turn on your TV, you turn on everything when you come home from work. That's when the demand is. That's when the lull, as you know, if you're a sailor, the wind drops at night, coming into the night. The wind farms go to sleep at that time. So the curve is horrible in terms of match to demand. So that means we're going to be selling that power somewhere else. The whole hatched out plan, I've talked to engineers about this, where they're going to put a 20 million volt line around the world and sell it to the dark side of the earth, for God's sakes. It's crazy stuff that they're talking about with wind farms. So we haven't done any whale studies about what I was talking about with the subsonic pressure waves that propagate into the ocean. So all your dolphins, they have ears. They use their ears for their echolocation. Same with the whales. No studies done there, I'm sorry. There's no studies on that, right? Yeah. My wife already talked about the character. I wanted to backstop Dale Mullins. Everything he said, 100% agree. 1.5 million pounds of concrete and rebar for the foundation for each one of these things, digging it all out. Where's that concrete plant. Where's all the lime that's being baked to produce the concrete lime? Not considered. That's Lafarge. They're going to make the money here. This is large-scale industrial engineering project. It's not green at all. It's not clean. They can put clean all over it. You know, coal's actually cleaner now because we have scrubbers. If you actually pay attention, they run water down through them, they collect the slur, and they put it right back in the coal mine. Very freaking clean. Very freaking clean. Not considering that, though, are we? Is there a decontamination trust fund for 2061 when this thing may go end of life? Who's going to pick up the bill? There should be a trust fund if we're going to really manage this industrially as a project, as a serious venture. So we're not planning. General Electric in their pamphlets over in Germany have wind farms, all nice and shiny with flowers and roses and birds flying around them. And in the back is a diesel generator just in case the wind drops. That's GE's propaganda in Germany. People just bought them anyway. What's wrong with hydropower? Our bill is hydro. Why don't we invest in that? That's probably the cleanest thing. We got Churchill Falls. That line's supposed to come down this way. Back in the day when we had our big kerfuffle, they were trying to run that power down to Pinckney's Point, and Nova Scotia Power and Mira Power was going, they actually incorporated a company down there in Boston to sell green energy. For those who don't know anything, I know a lot. So we're going to be in the business for selling green energy at our expense, making all the concrete and everything. So this is all inversion theory. This is like, if you make the lie bigger than Dallas, man, people will buy it just because they can't lie that bad. He's not that bad. It is that bad. It's horror. It's a horror show how stupid we are. It's really bad. I do this for a living, by the way, for cybersecurity. I'm constantly seeing people not thinking all the time. I mean, all over the world. I've got 100 banks I support globally. And my eyes are tired from looking at all that, how bad we are with managing these things.
You're running out of time. You've gone over your 5.
Yeah, so I said it all.
Okay.
Not all of it.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Tony Millard. We live on Cape Forshue. 2 quick questions, and they will be quick. The environmental assessment for this has been called into doubt in many areas by Environment, Climate Change Canada, Canadian Wildlife Service, John F. Kearney, and the Nova Scotia Bird Society. As a disclaimer, I'm the president of the Nova Scotia Bird Society, and we're very concerned by the damage that this will be doing to migratory birds. It's on a major East Coast flyway, and birds love flying at night in many species, often at low level, a lot of the sea ducks, straight into a turbine. It's a disaster. There's 3 rare bat species recorded in the area. The environmental assessment has so many holes in it and so many errors, it's not even funny. I know you've received the paperwork from John in the last couple of days. It's all in there. I've studied it. I deal with John quite a lot. Is that EV process now history? Are we completely screwed on the environment side of this? Yes or no? And I know politicians don't like yes and no answers. But are we screwed? Will the environment assessment that's been done already stand? Or will it be revisited, updated due to the inadequacies in that study, as we have missed a 30-day window to complain, shall we say?
Do you want to answer that now?
I can give it a shot.
Please do.
Yeah. So the environment, so the approval or reconsideration or review of that particular report is outside our mandate.
Okay.
It is entirely within the provincial government on
So
that
that's
question.
a no.
well, we cannot.
I know you can't, so that's now taken place, correct?
So to answer your question, yes or no, it would probably be the province to answer that, yes or no.
Okay, so no then from the province. Okay. Also, as several people have mentioned, you've got a bird sanctuary, for want of a better word, to one side of this.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the 75% of Canada's breeding population, roseate terns, 15 kilometres away on Brother Island.
We do.
You've got a huge number of rare birds in the area. Almost certainly great blue herons nesting in the area. You cannot touch at any time of the year a great blue heron nest.
Correct.
You can't go near it. Your bulldozer takes it out, it's a problem. And I can assure you we'll make it our business to keep monitoring as close as we can to the site to see if anything is happening here.
Lovely.
You say in the future, you've been the turbine people, you're going to be doing more reports for monitoring in the future for mortality. Is there a provision in there for the radar system, Accipiter, which is based out of Toronto, I believe, that if it does pick up a large night migration heading towards a site, to shut the turbines down? That exists down in New York for the Twin Towers lights. If that picks up a big amount of birds coming towards it, the Twin Tower lights are out. I know this is available in some areas of the world on wind farms, and the company that produces one of the best systems are based in Toronto. Has that been considered?
No.
Thank you very much. You've clearly not planned for all eventualities to do with the environment. So I have no more to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All about money.
My name is Betty, and I'm from Yarmouth, Yarmouth. I'm kind of a numbers person. I'm fascinated by all of the environmental things we've heard. But for me, it's numbers. You've talked about 1 megawatt supplies 750 homes in the presentation. Here in Nova Scotia, one home averages 10,000 kilowatts. That means that only that one of these megawatts only covers 10 homes in Nova Scotia. I'm not sure where the 750 comes from, but interestingly enough, Canada Energy Regulator. Okay, this is our federal government website. Okay, Nova Scotia. People don't just use the electricity in their homes. They use the electricity. If you go to the mall, that electricity is not being counted, and so on. Here in Nova Scotia, basically the amount of energy that's being produced, every one of us in this room in 2017 used 11 megawatts hours of electricity. Every one of us. Okay? Figure out how many windmills you need to have to just cover the number of people that we have around here. And they're not really producing. Right now, Alberta is having a terrible time with their electricity. They're actually being told that they're going to be having rolling blackouts in minus 40-degree temperatures, which is not very nice. You don't want your power to go off at minus 40. You don't want your heat to go off. And most of them are fortunately using natural gas, that dirty old thing that gets such a bad reputation. But they will be warm, but they may not be able to cook. They may not be able to turn their lights on or use their, showers. Those kind of inconvenient things that make daily life reasonable. And one of the things with this cold weather, the windmills aren't making any power. So they've got a grid out there which was set up for them by, the last 10 years. And they are not producing power. So you can imagine what's going to happen when everybody starts trying to drive electrical vehicles and you have to put them in. Did you know that those 6 in front of the Canadian Tire, if they were running full time, they would use the electrical equivalent of 1,070 homes. 1,070 homes to run 6 power chargers for electrical vehicles. 1,070 homes. Some of this green energy is not making sense. And that's just from the numbers point. I don't understand all of the environmental. I find all of this interesting. I do know that we live in a beautiful place. And I know that some of the wildlife, some of the birds, the dolphins, the whales, all of these things are unique to us. We better protect them, because if we don't, our children are not going to have the chance to enjoy them.
Thank you.
I'm super nervous about doing this. That's something I do. But I don't know. Linda Mullen from Hebron. Okay. Before council votes on the motion in February, perhaps ask yourself these questions. Would I want to or choose to live near a wind farm? Have I questioned realtors regarding depreciation of properties near a wind farm? Have I questioned realtors to inquire whether it is difficult to sell properties near a wind farm? Answers to these questions will guide your vote. Constructing wind turbines are directives that are issued by provincial governments, who in turn are being directed by the federal government. In the case of wind turbines, the directives are initiated by the Environment Minister, who is a known environmental fanatic. Municipal governments must remember that they are to represent the people to government, not the government to the people. Municipal governments must unite and express to the government that these are not wanted by the people, and that provincial governments must grow a pair, like Danielle Smith of Alberta, and fight for the citizens they represent. We must put an end to these environmental disasters that destroy not only the lives of the people who live nearby, but also the aesthetic beauty of the landscape in the futile attempt to fight a non-existent crisis. Now, I heard it mentioned earlier that these goals are to be accomplished by 2030. And this is from Agenda 30. And this is directives handed down by the UN and the WEF. And if you're not familiar with Agenda 30, you really, really must familiar yourself with it, because it's truly scary what's in mind for society. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
We're hoping. Thanks for everything you guys do. My name is Greg Muse. I am originally from Quinnen. I own land, but I live in Brazil Lake. But I have land in the Municipality of Argyle. One of the things I noted in his presentation is I didn't hear him say anything about easements. And if I want to hook up power, I need an easement to the grid. But I never heard a word of that. So I don't know if he's got it, but that's one of the things you want to check. One of the things also that I noted is there's a good presentation, and everybody's tax bill in the municipality is going to go down probably by $2,000, because he's saying that you're going to have $6,000, $600,000 a year, right? So it's going to reduce everybody's tax. I think you got to ignore that, because you've got to look at the existing windmills. How much money did you get from them? How much did you get promised? Right? Money a lot of times sells things, but a lot of times it doesn't come through. It was so much per kilowatt hour. Are you going to get those kilowatt hours? I doubt. If you go by Pumnico, you see half the mills stop. And if they were going all the time at prime rate, probably you'd get a little bit of money on it. But they don't. They never do. The wind's too high. They don't work. Was it 40 or 60 kilometers an hour? They don't work. There's a lot of things, factors that you have to consider in this situation. You've had a lot of information given to you tonight. I make you a challenge that you check and research all that information, because if it's false, you'll find out. But if it's true, you'll also find out. Then you can make an informed decision. I know we have a group of intelligent, smart, responsible citizens sitting at this table that wants to see what's best for Argyle. So my challenge is you research. Do your research. Don't make a hasty decision, because hasty decisions aren't the best. There's people with wisdom that have come to you. There's people with knowledge that have come to you. I'm just trying to give you a little insight on how I would do it if I was sitting in your seat. I'm not sitting in your seat, but I know a lot of you, and I respect all of you. Okay? So thank you very much for your time.
Did you have?
Just, I think on the easement side, Elemental may have a comment on that, because I think they will confirm that they do have that, but that's not for me to say. The part on the Pumnico wind turbine, you raised an issue that I want to make clear on how it works in terms of taxation. So what happens is it's not the power that's generated by the wind turbines that define that. It's the capacity of the power that the wind turbine can produce that will define that number. So in the case of Pumnico, the revenue for the municipality is approximately $188,000 a year, give or take, 1% increase per year. That would be only on the turbines themselves. That would not be on any other equipment or anything like that. At that time, that would have been the first wind turbine in Nova Scotia. I wasn't even here. I was just a wee boy. And so when that was put in place, so that was in part, the fee was coming mostly from the developer, but we also received a subsidy from the provincial government at that time. It was the first and only time that actually happened. So I think that if your concern might be it's not turning as often as it should, that's a legitimate concern. If it's from a taxation perspective, I can say that that won't change that, but it would clearly change the amount of energy that's being produced and sold, and that I can respect that. I hope that clarifies things. I really appreciated you coming in and being so respectful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Darlene, I'm from Rennerton. Just clarify what you just said. So it's
Your name?
Darlene from Rennerton.
Okay.
180. What were those numbers?
Sorry. So let me be a bit more detailed. Because I'm a numbers person too. There was another one back there. Was the numbers? There are, I believe, it's 18 turbines in that location. Did I get that number right? Or 17? 17. Sorry, there are 17 turbines in that location. They're much smaller than some of the newer models. And at the time that we would have received approximately 4,500 per nameplate capacity, or per megawatt, I guess. And so the total of that revenue for that particular development equaled about 188,000.
So that revenue was 188.
Correct.
Regardless
per year.
of how much energy was produced.
Correct.
Or how much they sold.
Correct.
So that 188 had to come from
it came from the
people buying the power?
It came from the developer. So
and where would he get the money?
From the generation of power to Nova Scotia Power.
From the people buying the power.
From Nova Scotia Power, who buys it, and then Nova Scotia Power then sells it to residents of Nova Scotia.
Right. So basically, who's paying for it? The person that is buying the power, right?
The
'Cause
ultimate payer of that would be that person, yeah.
Right, right. So regardless of whether it generates 90,000 megawatts or not, he still has to pay 188. We as the
does.
taxpayers still have to cough up, or as a power payer, have to cough up the 188,000. But he doesn't have, because his windmills are stopped. It's not producing
Right.
a full amount of power, is it?
I don't think wind turbine, I can't speak in too much detail on how wind turbines work every day because I'm clearly not in that business,
Do they work every day?
but they don't work every day all the time.
Does he know anything? He's not answering.
I think he's being very respectful and trying to listen.
Respectful.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's trying, you know.
Okay, so when I look directly at you, I kind of expect your answer, not his.
Yeah, normally
Because I've got
council
his
meeting,
answer.
there's a process around who can talk at what point. So
Okay.
that's why I'm not.
Is it
responding
his
to
turn?
two
Is
questions.
it his turn now?
That would be up to the warden to decide.
Is it his turn to answer my question now?
Yep. Just put on his mic.
Okay, now it's your turn.
Turn.
Okay.
So
Do they work
turbines
full-time?
do not necessarily turn every day for various reasons.
Right.
There could be maintenance issues that we're working with.
Wind?
It could be wind conditions. As was noted, winds, there's a certain, needs to reach
Temperature.
a certain threshold before wind turbines, we turn them on and they start generating electricity. Under extreme conditions, we also shut them down, and that's more for the protection of the infrastructure.
Okay, so bottom line, they don't run every day full tilt. They can't. It's impossible, right? This is what you're
Yeah,
saying,
yeah,
because there's
yeah,
too many.
yeah. But
Okay,
I think
so if they don't run every day, they're not going to produce their capacity, are they? And if they don't produce their capacity, you still have to pay this gentleman over here 180,000 or whatever that number was, right? So how do you get that money? You're not generating it to sell it. So you have to pay him, right?
yeah. So I mean,
what do you have to
so
do?
I
Do you
think
have
this
to
is,
jack
I
up
just
our
want to
power
be
bills?
clear for
Do you have to
everybody.
jack up our power
We have
bills?
Can I chime in on the video here?
Sure.
So hi, and
Hi.
thanks for the question. So I think we're talking about property taxes here. I think the way property taxes work in Nova Scotia is that there's a fixed price or a fixed rate that we as the operator have to pay per megawatt of capacity that we install, regardless of the operation of the project. Which
That's
is a
his
good advantage.
180,000, right? That's his
So
180,
I think
whatever
that
his number.
Elaine was
Yeah.
talking about another project. I think he was talking about Pubnico Point.
Yep.
So our project, we estimate over $600,000 a year in property taxes, and that gets paid out of the revenues of the project.
But
So
where do the revenues come from?
selling the power to Nova
who?
Scotia Power under a fixed price
Who does
contract
Nova Scotia Power sell the power to?
to the ratepayers of Nova Scotia.
Right, so us, the guys that use the power, the homeowner, the EV driver, right?
Yep.
Okay, so he makes
All
a
power,
short,
yeah, all
he
power
makes a
users.
shortfall. He doesn't produce because his machines can't produce full capacity. He has a shortfall, right, in what he can bring in. So how does he make up that shortfall? Oh, he raises the rates. And who pays the higher power rates?
Just can we
Wouldn't that
just
be us?
kind of stop here because
Yeah.
we have a fixed cost
Yeah.
for power over a 25-year period.
Ours went up.
It is, but our agreement is with Nova Scotia Power. We have a fixed price
So do
that
you
we
go-
sell power to. It is our risk that we take around determining what that price is. We've determined the price for the power that we can generate it for. That's our risk.
Right.
So we take that for 25 years. So that's not, taxpayers aren't exposed to any operational issues around us. We also have a commitment that we have to supply a certain amount of power per year. So we actually get punished, we'll get fined if our project's not available to supply that power.
so does your company just go down? Because standard procedures for companies to make a profit is they have to sell something to be able to cover their expenses. And if you can't produce enough cakes to sell them, to pay it, then, do you know what I mean? Do you understand what I'm saying? It sounds like basic economics to me. If you don't produce enough power, where are you going to get the money that, even if you thought and really, really wanted to sell us that amount of power, but we just couldn't do it? Where does that money come
So
from?
respectfully, I don't think it's appropriate to debate
No, I think,
how wind projects work here tonight.
I think.
But doesn't that mean that our power rates go up? Because that's
Not-
what I keep hearing
but-
about wind
I think
power and that.
he's answered as much as he can on that topic.
Okay.
Because at this point, like he said, it's going towards the operation. And
It's
I don't
going
think-
towards us having to pay
Well-
higher power rates, which seems to be the follow-up to a lot of these things. The other question.
Anyway,
Can I ask one other topic?
Yeah, you've gone over your
Sure, but can I ask
your
one
minute.
more question? Just one, and it's simple. Do you have to put oil? Can he answer?
Well, he's on.
Okay. Do you have to put oil in windmills?
There are lubricants.
Yeah.
There are cooling sort of like fluids. So there's a number of different types of fluids that are associated with a generator.
How much
and oil is part of that. I can't tell you the volume of oil.
Okay,
I
thank
won't-
you.
I think that's a
won't make
reasonable
those-
answer because
Well, I
it's
just thought you were the
dependent
man
on
with-
the generator size. It's dependent on the turbine manufacturer.
Okay,
I'm not an engineer.
This
and,
generator
and
size.
frankly, it's kind of irrelevant.
I'm
to,
hearing numbers like 700-800 gallons of oil in one of those. Is that a reasonable number?
That doesn't seem consistent with my understanding.
No, so that's not. Does anyone know?
I can just say, so just to be clear, like we're not using oil to generate power.
No,
The
but
oil
you have
is
to
about
use it.
lubrication, and I think neither John nor I know the number of liters of lubricants used, but it'd be typical for rotating machinery.
It would be typical for big machinery. So,
I think the conversation
okay.
is
So in
over.
other words,
Thank you.
nobody knows the answer. Okay. Good. That's all I wanted. I don't know it either.
Like she, that's the answer.
Anybody else?
I'd like to say something.
Go to the mic.
My name is Alice Claremont, and I've come to all these meetings that you fellas have had, and I've listened, and if I want to ask questions, I ask questions. As I think this is the last meeting, public meeting, to my knowledge. I ain't disagreeing with what anybody said here tonight, but if they had so much to say, why was there not here when John Turner and them came down and started the meetings? That's when we should have heard that stuff, and that's when we would have
I was locked out
gone.
of the country.
So,
That's why.
but I don't believe in attacking a man like he's being attacked tonight, and for you fellers to allow it. I do not think that's proper. You said 5 minutes, you should have cut it off. If they had so much to say, they should have informed us at the first meeting and came to every meeting and told us all this stuff. Then we'd have known where we stood. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I hope I was under 5 minutes.
much less.
We're late to the party, but we're still gonna have it.
I'm disgusted that I got 20 minutes to write this down in this meeting, just so you know. And this was right off the cuff.
Well, if you'd have came
If
to
I
every
had-
meeting, every meeting that I went to.
Yeah, I didn't get noticed.
You'd have had the 5 minutes.
I don't think we need the.
But it is important that you
The-
guys
the-
don't do your riding. In the old days, you would get on a horse and ride to us. That's why you're called a
I never
riding.
got a knock on the door.
But you don't even know that. I know that. I just told you some news. But that's how it used to be done.
Yeah, that's okay.
We're done. Be heard. We're not done. We're gonna.
Well, we are done.
I'm not.
Alain, did you have something, Alain? You had your mic pushed on? No? Okay, okay. Yeah, you can come forward.
Richard Russell from Carleton. And I'd like to talk about the cycle of the electricity when you produce with windmills. So if we take a typical day, say around 5 o'clock in the morning, you have a thermal generator, say of a 100 megawatt unit. Because the windmills are still, that 100 megawatt unit is putting out 100 megawatts at full load, and it's at its highest efficiency, which means that it is burning up most of the fuel and whatever, right? So when the wind comes up and the wind must start blowing, then that 100 megawatt unit has to start going down and down to 40 megawatts. You can't shut it off, because if the wind stops blowing, those big units aren't like Perry where you can go burn, 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 and pick up 100 megawatts, right? So you bring them down to 40 megawatts and you sit there. And that's when they spew out CO2 very heavily. So when the windmills come on, it's all nice green power. But on the other side of the equation of the thermal plant, those units are sitting there at minimum load, just spewing out the CO2. And that's about all I'd have to say.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Is there anybody online who had questions, or I think it's only Preston Blair.
Hi, good evening. Yeah, no, I'm pretty good, but I just wanted to say I'm really impressed with the dialogue tonight. I've been listening in, a lot of engagement, so it's good. And if I could mention something, and I think maybe the last speaker brought it up, was the ongoing dialogue, and so Preston Blair, we had a property in Plymouth, not too far, and is again dialoguing early. I know we just received notice of this in December, so I'm not sure if we've missed it or somehow, but I know the project is well underway. Environmental assessments are done, investments are made, investors are lined up. It is you're at the finish line, but if there's an opportunity, and I'll just mention this to council and for the municipality, is think about again early dialogue when you start projects like this, just to get this kind of input as you're putting together your bylaws, looking at easements, looking at again the setbacks for seasonal properties and those sorts of things, so you can get it right and get it set for your current project and projects in the future. So that's kind of my note and my message. I just want to get that on record. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no one else, I guess that we come to the end of the hearing. Certainly it was good to see the people, and it's always nice to hear the concerns and whatever. We are listening for sure, but it is the process that we had to do. We have to go to the public, and we've been to the public a few times with this project. This is not the first time. So anyway, again, thank you for attending, and I'll turn it.
Can I ask a question? Was the input going to be used for any decision process tonight?
That was just about what I was going to get to.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So some of the things that were raised today might be outside of our mandate because we're looking at a particular thing. So there have been a lot of concerns. I'm trying to repeat what, just for the benefit of everybody hearing what I heard, the terms of like the cost of energy, the input or output of CO2s, the environmental impacts, all of those items. Some of which we can certainly raise, especially those on environment, because they fall right into what we expect in our contract. There have been some points here, and I'm going to try to catch. I know I can't catch every point, right? And we do have minutes, so I'm trying to say it out loud so that you can hear what I heard. And there was a question or a concern regarding independent expert to confirm the compliance of the rules that are in place. That is something that we will take away. I think it's something that we can definitely look into because it does relate, at least in some way, with the contract. Because there were quite a few questions and concerns around environmental, we are aware of bird sanctuaries and the location of these, and at least certainly not as familiar as many here, but certainly somewhat familiar with the migrating patterns and the need for complete privacy in certain instances when they're nesting. We can follow through as a municipality with the environment to determine particularly what they saw and what they how they came to the conclusion to approve as it relates specifically to wildlife, bird life. I think that was raised today. I think we have a responsibility to follow through on that. There had been some questions on realtors and property value. We have already done that research on the property valuation. There's no connection as of today between the erection of these things and a causality of decrease in property values. There are obviously occasions where values have gone up, and there are occasions where values have gone down. Those situations may or may not have been impacted by wind turbines. So there's evidence both ways on that. So we did look into that internally in the past, and again, the last, I shouldn't say last, but the other items, the concerns around subsidizing and the generation of power and how it will impact the Nova Scotia power rates. In a lot of ways, Nova Scotia does set those rates. It's outside our control, but we will endeavor to inquire and see how is there a plan? What is the plan of action? The provincial government was very clear about their mandate about bringing in, I guess, greener energy. Whether you agree with that statement or not, that's how they interpreted it. And so we'll take a look at what the impact might be to Nova Scotia, the impact on Nova Scotia Power. That one's a tough one because it does rely on a third party that we don't. It's an electrical company that we're not directly associated with. Insofar as that was concerned, those so the two issues that continue for me that came out of this were the outside confirmation of compliance, as well as the environmental issues around birds. Those two things resounded for me. So the zoning, that particular zoning is a rural community zone. I botched the name, and it does allow, as through development agreement, the erection of turbines, provided that they meet certain setbacks and certain rules. So that property, that location is not zoned industrial, but the zone would allow for this development to occur in that location, provided that the developer met certain criteria. And that's exactly why we have a development agreement. The development agreement lists those issues that we have heard from the community over the past 2 years, and try our best to address the ones that address that relate to land use. There are clearly other issues around wind turbines that people find either disgusting or fabulous that are outside of our agreement. The things around power consumption, et cetera, would be examples of that. But that's the land is appropriately zoned, and it would not be allowed to continue unless they complied with the rules that were preset and passed by council. So that's what I heard. Thank you for that reminder. What we will do is we will as a municipality, we will circle back on the sound experts and these. So we will go to the experts that dealt with the. We will deal with the experts that deal with this at the provincial government, because they would be the ones that would regulate that particular item. That it does not meet the expectations of others is outside of our ability to change, but we will reset our situation with the provincial government and understand precisely what was done on the sound or subsonic sound issues. There is, it's fine. We can agree to disagree on the word for sure. So the last thing was a follow-up with the developer around technology that might raise a warning system for any sort of bird migration. That was raised as well. I didn't include it in my discussion before, but I have it on my list now, and we will follow that through with the developer. Though it is not directly required for us in our agreement, it would be important for us to follow through on that question. It's clear that sometimes that the public has questions that we may not have an immediate answer to. And so sometimes as a council and as a staff, we're quiet. And some of that is because we want to make sure we hear you and listen. And the other is that we may not have the answer exactly today, but that we are going to do our best to try to find the answer as soon as possible. And so I would ask for your patience on that particular item. We can, as a consequence, subsequently from this meeting, we can see if we can summarize some of this information online, or if you have a better idea around how to obtain that information, let us know.
Can you see how much oil is used typically as a lubricant?
Sure. I mean, I think again, the developer, we can't find that. It's right. It's very detailed question. So we can look into the technical specs of that. I'm sure the developer will open a book and they'll find that information. I didn't actually hear that one in the presentation, but there is a hazardous waste facility here in the municipality. The only thing I could say is I could confirm whether or not that particular item is an acceptable item for the waste park. I want to talk about decommissioning very quickly, because I think it was mentioned in some areas. The decommissioning is, of course, the responsibility of the developer. We want to make sure that the landowners aren't the ones hit with the bill. So oftentimes so one of the things that might be interesting to share is that these turbines, there is a lot of metal that was spoken here. There's a lot of metal, and coal is certainly required in the production of metal. No argument there. Absolutely correct. And so we'd have to compare that to the cost of building a coal plant to really have a proper analysis, but we're not going to go there today. So I think at the end of the day, what we can say is that the salvage value of those turbines is very high. So it is in the interest, it is in the business interest of Elemental or its predecessor, or it's another company, if another company becomes involved, to take them down, because they are probably worth more in terms of an asset than anything else in the organization upon decommissioning. So they are in the business interest of getting their money back on the sale of that. As a municipality, we are interested in getting them down. We don't want those up after they're done. And as the residents, I don't think they want them. They may not want them there in the first place, but they certainly don't want them there at the end of the project. So everybody's on the same page there. They are under compliance under provincial law that they must do this. And oftentimes turbines, when they're purchased by the manufacturers have clauses inside of that include a decommissioning fee. So there is no perfect answer to that question, but there are, as John mentioned, there are elements that are in place. I say we, the developer has in place to reduce risk in those areas. So I've written down oil lubricated, decommish, and magnet hazardous. We have not done that analysis. That analysis would rest with the province of Nova Scotia. We're dealing with a development, and we're dealing with a particular. I mean, we do have a hydro electric plant here in Tuscot, as you know, and it's outside of our ability to do a cost comparison analysis of the hydro versus a wind turbine. We are dealing with this particular development. We're not making comments as to whether there are superior or inferior modes of this particular power. That's up to the province to decide. That's outside of our mandate. This is a provincial project. Our responsibility is to ensure that the separation distances and other regulations are being met by the developer. But this is a provincial initiative. So that, I think, summarizes what I've heard. We'll do our very, very best to bring that information to bear in public as soon as we can. If there's any questions that you may want to reach out directly to the province of Nova Scotia, we'd be happy to assist you with navigating that to make sure that there's people that could be in touch with you. We can't promise the timing of that, but we can try to find names for you.
Last question is, anything we can do to not have this, but what plans were aligned with that? Has anyone examined that?
Well, it's a provincially approved program, and the council will decide whether the development agreement addresses the rules that we've set forth. So, council will vote either in favor or against that particular contract. In terms of all the other things like environmental and all those other hoops that the developer went through, again, those actually already happened. So this is like we're into year almost 3 of this process. We've had a number of public engagement sessions, both done by Elemental and ourselves independently.
Capture negative comments or offer to reject presentations through those 3 years in the presentations from the vendor.
Was there a capture of negative comments?
Was there a place for them to say reject in the meeting? You walk in, sign into a presentation or a demo. Was on that form ever a field that says reject?
Or accept. I can't recall whether there was a reject or accept on that particular piece of paper. I do know that the sessions were very loose in terms of the presentations. There were a lot of one-on-one conversations, and all of the issues that people were raising were documented by either the developer or ourselves. And so actually some of that informed our development agreement and made it a stronger document for both parties. So for instance, the distance of a turbine to a public road was adjusted to make sure that the public road was protected. That was not in the original design. It was raised by a resident, and we said, you know what? Good on you. So it did have impact too.
Documents that were captured were presumptively constructed to just capture comment only. Therefore, it's now being used as a form of agreement that the public was giving input, but it wasn't really made clear to them what they were doing.
Well, I'm not sure.
They walked in, they signed in, they thought, hey, and then they leave. And then, look, this meeting people saw this and they didn't reject. Sounds like agreement.
Yeah, there was no indication of agreement or disagreement. It wasn't the intention of the meeting.
Showed up is a prima facie evidence that they agreed, they didn't have to reject, right?
I think we're often under the presumption that if somebody comes to an open house, they're typically not in agreement of the production, because typically if people are in agreement, they have a tendency to stay home. They are signing into an open house agreement, open house.
It's the notion you signed and you were there, and if you didn't offer a disagreement, it stands as an agreement in the law.
Well, that That may be the case in the law, but that is not, that may be the case, that may be the case in the law. That may be the case in the law, but that is not what happened in those meetings. A completely different design and development. Completely different design and development. I can't comment on that. Well, that's a much different development. Yeah. Yeah. Can we?
I know.
Can we?
I think.
So I think we did pick up the bird sanctuary issues and all the issues that we heard, and we're going to do our very best to come up with as much information as possible to the council and to the residents who are interested in hearing it. You'll have to ask that question to the province of Nova Scotia and their environmental assessment.
Okay, I think. Oh, did you want to? No, I thought you wanted to return. Yeah. I think we've exhausted our time, exhausted the people's time for questions, and so I thank you again all for coming. And this adjourns this session.